Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. We have lots of interesting stories to talk about today. Last week, we heard of the shocking decision for accused Idaho murderer Bryan Kohberger to confess to the murders of the 4 Idaho college students who were brutally stabbed to death. And now a new detail has emerged because we're all hanging on to, we all want to know what happened, but there's this gag order, and one of the parents accidentally spilled another bit of information. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We also are going to talk about a freak accident involving a motorcycle and a bear. A mother who was told that her sick child had a virus only to find out that it was something much more dangerous. We also have some stories involving air travel, including the potential problems you could face if you have a sweaty crotch, and what happens when you sit next to a total crazy person on the airplane. All that and more on today's episode. Let's get started with this new information about Bryan Kohberger.
So amid Bryan Kohberger's plea deal, Kaylee Gonsalves' family has revealed that he beat her in the head and face as she fought for her life before he ended up stabbing her to death. So I'm over here thinking, are they going to get in trouble for releasing this information? Because I thought the judge made it pretty clear no information was to come out until after his sentencing.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how that works. All I know is that so Kaylee Gonsalves' dad has been very outspoken. He's I don't know, when I think about the parents of all these victims, he's the one that always stands out to me because I always see him on the news. And this week in particular, he's been very outspoken about the fact that he's not happy that they offered him a plea deal. He wanted him to get tried for the death penalty. And of course, other parents involved, because you have 4 students that were murdered, so other parents have opinions as to what they believe should happen, and some of them are okay with the plea deal. He was not happy about how he was told, so apparently he found out over email. And right outside of the courtroom, the day Bryan Kohberger was doing the plea hearing, he had said to reporters that he was not going in to watch it. And he also seemed like he was pissed off and on fire because he found out due to flight records that Bryan Kohberger's parents had bought flights out there days before he was even told that there was going to be this plea deal. So he believes that, if you want to read between the lines, he believes that Bryan Kohberger knew about the plea deal and were told about it days before the victims' families. So he was like hot and on fire, and you could imagine, and it's totally justifiable, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's far-fetched that the Kohbergers would be aware of it beforehand, because it's not like that you wake up one morning and you're like, okay, today's the day to do the plea deal. The teams were probably planning it out for a while before they told anybody about it, but you can't control what Kohberger might have told his family on a prison phone call or something.
Yeah, I get that, but it seems like it's because there's been a lot of information coming out that possibly Kohberger decided to plead guilty because his parents had to take the stand in his murder trial. His mom, his dad, and possibly his sister. And a lot of people have been speculating that that's why he took it, to spare them of having to go through anymore. And it's kind of like, why is his family getting any kind of priority in this whole thing when Kaylee is the one that was murdered? You would think that their families would have the priority.
If he cared about his family, he wouldn't have murdered 4 innocent people, because their life's ruined forever because of his actions. It doesn't matter if they had to go on the stand or not. I agree with the victims' families. I think it's bullshit that they weren't notified. Like, the way they were notified was totally ridiculous. Only getting a few days notice, getting an email about it on a Sunday night, barely having time to get there for the hearing. That was outrageous. Now that I've had a couple days to sit with it, I at first I just couldn't even believe they would offer somebody a plea deal of the capacity of the murders he did. But now that I'm sitting with it, it really only does take one person that he wouldn't have got the death penalty anyway. And then there's the possibility for a hung jury. There's so many things that could go wrong in the process. So this
I
is a
think if you
guaranteed
look
conviction.
if you look at all of these things, and not that Brian Koberger was famous before, or anybody knew who he was before this happened, but think about this, like O.J. Simpson, that looked like it was pretty clear cut, right?
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
He got out of it. Casey Anthony, like all of these people, Diddy just happened. There's like
Yeah.
literally video of him beating the shit out of someone, and you know, all of this stuff. But then, so I do understand, like I could go back and forth, but I'm just trying to think now from this dad's perspective, like if that happened to you when you went away to college or something, like I understand 100% why this family is just pissed off. And because I don't even know if you caught this, and I've been thinking about this because when we first heard about this hearing, you put it on the laptop. You were sitting here in my office and we were listening to it live. And when the judge's opening statement, he was kind of being an asshole to and directly putting it towards that particular father, because when Kelly Gonzalez's dad found out about this, he said publicly on the news, like, call the judge and try to overturn his decision and make sure, like, this is I would do the same exact thing. I would just be like, please call and find out if we cannot do this, and just express your concerns. Like, I try to gather as many people as I could. Well, this judge started talking, and do you remember he was just like, there's been multiple calls to our office and it's been very disruptive, and you're not changing my mind. And like, I don't know, I just felt like it was so douchey. Like, this guy's daughter was murdered and you're like reprimanding him in front of everybody. Like, everybody knows who it was towards, you know?
Well, that's why I think they might get reprimanded for releasing this information, even though they were doing it in response to criticisms they've been facing for their reaction to the plea deal. Like, I think, even though I just said I am more understanding of the plea deal, I'm not saying that they should be. I'm just saying, like, the more time I've had to sit with it, I understand it, but I'm also not the family of somebody that was murdered like that. So they have every right to be upset about what happened. I mean, they're not seeking proper justice in this family's opinion for their daughter, and they don't understand why their daughter didn't have a choice and she was brutally murdered, but this guy just gets to sit in jail and be alive. It's hard to wrap your mind around.
So we only have very limited details of the case, except for the little bits and pieces that have been getting leaked over the course of the past couple of years. But they said, until when's he's officially like pleading guilty on July
23rd. So we'll obviously be keeping up to date on that.
Yeah, so July 23rd, they said, let's keep the gag order in place because they know that that's probably a good idea, just because they know that so many media sources are reaching out to all the family members and everyone involved in this case, survivors, friends, everything. But so there's been, as Maria said, there's been people online who have been judgmental, honestly, about the Kaylee Gonzalez's family's decision that they want the death penalty, and which this just pisses me off. It pisses me off so bad, like what trolls people are, because if you think about a person that their child was murdered in this way, and it's so high profile and it's something that gets brought up every single day, why would you ever just like go on their social media page and be an asshole to them? It's just like total troll mentality. They think that they're like chastising them for seeking vengeance over justice. Like, why would you ever judge anybody like that? It's so bizarre.
I don't understand why anybody goes on anybody's social media and starts shit with them, but if somebody lost a family member in this horrific and highly publicized way, leave them alone and let them grieve how they're going to grieve.
So that prompted all of this chastising, prompted the mother to write a message on social media that said, quote, if your 21-year-old daughter was sleeping in her bed and Brian Koberger went into her house with the intention to kill her, which is also a side note because there's always been speculation that he was targeting certain people. So that's another clue. So went into the house with the intention to kill her, and he did by stabbing her many times as well as beating her in the face and head while it was clear that she fought for her life. What would you want? And so that to me is okay. They've released two details that we haven't gotten clear on.
Yeah, because we have never heard before this that he beat any of them.
Yeah, and we never heard that Kaylee was a target because it's believed that it's been speculated just because of where he entered bedrooms and such that there were certain people that were targets and then there were other people that were just collateral damage. So now we know for sure that Kaylee was the target and that she was beat up in her face beforehand. I'm sure this isn't a violation of the gag order. If I'm the dad, I'm just like, fuck you. I'm doing whatever I want at this point.
Yeah, but what if they end up getting arrested over releasing information?
Do you get arrested? Like, what happens? I'm just curious. Because, like,
I think it could be considered, like, contempt of court.
Because, like, at this point, the guy, they're not getting what they want. The guy's pleading guilty. He can't back out of it now. Like, I don't know. Like, what's the dad have to lose at this point?
I understand that, but he's still on a technicality, and this judge seems to not be, like, super sympathetic to them. Like, he's still violating a court order, so if they really want to act on that, they can.
Yeah.
And by the gag order getting released in a couple weeks, that doesn't necessarily mean Brian Kober is going to have to sit down and tell us what happened. This is just data and discovery they've collected that they were going to present at trial that's going to come
like,
out.
He might not. I mean, obviously, we would listen, okay? I've been saying since day one that this whole entire case is going to have some kind of a twist to it. And the twist is that he's going to become the most famous, prolific serial killer of all time. And he's going to talk all about it. And there's going to be research papers written about him. And he's going to get all the attention he wants for the rest of his life. There will be some point in our lifetime that he will sit down with somebody and tell them in gruesome detail exactly what happened. Because he wants to be studied. Like, that will 100% happen. But for now, just based upon the autopsy and everything like that, that tells us a lot of what happened, which is she was beat in the face, for example, and you could tell that those bruises were fresh and they had bleeding, which indicates that she was alive when they happened. And there's lots of details that are going to come out that the families know because of what they were told. They might know the extent of their wounds. They might release the autopsy reports. I don't know, but like, just not having him confess to exactly what happened, the science could tell us a lot of what happened without him telling us.
Yeah, but I guess the question is still going to remain, like, why?
Well, that might come out because there might be, you don't even know what they have from the phone records. I mean, there might be, might be a lot of information in those phone records. And I believe.
No, didn't the prosecutor say in that hearing that they had no evidence tying him to them? Or that house?
I don't know. Did he? I don't think so.
I think
you know what else he said, which I thought was interesting too. He said, like, let me be clear. There was no evidence of a sexual that this was a sexual assault or any kind of sexual crime in this of that nature. And I kind of like, I don't know if I agree with that because.
Well, the killing might have been the sexual component, not that they were, like, assaulted.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they might not have been he didn't say sexual assault, though. He said it didn't have a sexual nature of any kind. And I'm kind of like, nah, there's a high probability that dude went in his car and, like, jerked off after he did that. That's like a thing that that certain serial killers do. They get sexually arouses them to do something like this.
Well, I'd argue most serial killers are sexually aroused by
exactly.
this,
so I'm like, I don't know if you should say that. Like, I think you could say there was no evidence that at that time that they were sexually assaulted. There's just a difference in the terminology.
He did say sexually assaulted.
No, he didn't. He didn't. Trust me, he didn't.
I could be misremembering what he said, but I thought something was said along the lines of, like, they didn't have any concrete evidence connecting him to them. So, but that can't be right because otherwise I don't know. Otherwise, how could that be correct? Because they wouldn't have been able to take him to trial if they didn't have anything connecting him to them beyond the DNA, correct? So we'll see. All right, let's move on to the next story. In Romania, this guy parked his motorcycle next to a do not feed bear sign only to then be attacked by a bear, which dragged him into a ravine and killed him.
Yeah. What are the chances of that, right? So he fell, what was it, 262-foot drop?
Yes.
That's blunt damage, injuries, significant ones. He was wearing full motorcycle gear. So what are the chances that you fall in a ravine like this and you're wearing a helmet, but it was such a far drop that it wasn't going to do anything to save his life. So he was pronounced dead at the scene.
So apparently Romania has the largest population of brown bears in Europe outside of Russia. They have 13,000 bears roaming around. And over the past 2 decades, brown bears have killed 26 people and injured almost 300 others. So this led
that's why the sign's up.
Yeah, that's why the sign's up, because you obviously don't want to draw them near you at all. And then the irony of this guy parking next to the sign only 2 minutes later be attacked by this bear is pure irony.
All right, let's talk about this next story, which is a really good one to talk about how you should always, that doctors don't know more than you. You always know more than about your kids than a doctor does, and how you should push if you think something's not right.
Yeah, always advocate for yourself. This woman brought one of her 18-month-old twins to the hospital after he woke up screaming. There, they told the mom that he had a stomach virus, but something didn't feel right to her, so she pushed for them to do some more exams. They ended up doing an x-ray, and it turned out that he swallowed a button battery, and she said, they said they could do one to make me feel better.
Yeah,
about
like
the
it's
x-ray.
how insulting. I love that so much because she probably was like, you're a douchebag, right? Because
Yes.
it's like so insulting to be like, it's so patronizing to say, oh, well, we'll do one if that'll make you feel better, but
Why
we're
wouldn't
right.
they just do it to rule something out?
I don't know. And her first instinct was like, he's crying continuously, and she thought that he was drooling abnormally. And right there, that should be, if she's telling the physician that, like, why is he drooling so much? That right there should be a sign that something is not right. And the way that the kid just couldn't be consoled, and it just was, I think about because so many people would be like, okay, I guess they're right, and leave. And swallowing, so a button battery is it's those little circular batteries. You can find them in like remote controls. You could find them in certain toys, in watches, and they're so many kids end up ingesting these things. It's really terrible. But what happens is that when a kid swallows one of these, the saliva activates it and it causes it to release chemicals into the underlying tissue. So it would be like lodged in the esophagus because it's like sometimes they're like the size of a quarter. So it's in the esophagus and it could essentially eat a hole through the esophagus. There's a lot of adjacent structures. You have the trachea, you have the carotid arteries, the jugular vein, everything is all in that area of the neck. And if this happens, it's not only a surgical emergency, but it could lead to a child's death. And in this case, as soon as they recognized that this was there, it went from being like, we're going to do this x-ray to make you feel better, to within minutes rushing this kid into emergency surgery.
It is so insulting to be like, oh, we'll do it to make you feel better. And then not satisfaction, because it's a horrible situation, but her just being like, I'm right, you're a dickhead, like, thank you. But at least in this case, this kid ended up being okay.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say he's 100% okay. The battery did damage, and it did eat a hole into his esophagus. So he had to get something called an NG tube, which is a nasogastric tube, which helps eat, and it bypasses the esophagus while the esophagus heals. So then the esophagus heals, and it's scarred up pretty bad. And when the esophagus scars up, it can cause a stricture, which means that when you eat food, it can't go down as well because it's kind of closing and clamping shut on itself. So now he has to get these procedures with an esophageal balloon, which is they stick this little, like, basically down inside of the throat, this deflated balloon, and they open it up to kind of stretch the esophagus back out to normal. And he may need to get this done several times in his life, unfortunately, because this could be permanent damage. He didn't die. He didn't have anything serious happen, but think about having an 18-month-old baby that has a problem getting food down, and as they turn into a child and into an adult, like it could be a lifelong problem for this kid as he grows. And it's just a seriously alarming thing about, and we hear this all the time about doctors blowing people off, and it's really really upsetting. But these button injuries happen so frequently. They say, like, statistically within the past couple of years, 3,500 times a year that it happens in the United States alone that a kid eats one of these things. So whatever it is about them, they're shiny, they're silver, it's like the new quarter of this century. Like, kids used to swallow quarters all the time. Now it's like, ooh, these shiny batteries look more appetizing for whatever reason.
Well, she was saying she didn't know where the battery came from, but a lot of toddler toys have them. And I'm just like, how are you always going to prevent them from falling out? I guess you could double check that the toy is secure and the battery components are screwed shut right, but things happen over time. Are you really analyzing every single one of your kids' toys?
I don't know if a toddler toy has one because of this reason. I feel like if they did, they would be screwed in and they would not be easily accessible.
Yeah, but over time, the screw could come loose. And I'm saying, like, as a parent, are you picking up every single one of your kids' toys and making sure all the battery compartments
I don't think it's
sealed?
from a toy, honestly. I think it's from, I'll give you an example. We have, like, those fairy lights outside. And and there are things like people have. So I'm trying to think. We have, like, the lights, the candles, the flameless candles, all sorts of these things that you get, like, on Amazon. They come with these little flat batteries that you could change to light a remote control. They're like really really flat. They're in those things, and, like, kids love remote controls. They always put them in their mouth. They always play with them. Like, I feel like that's more probable. Even the ones I have for the TV, the newer ones, have the flat battery inside of them. And that's easy. Like, if you push in the little tray and pull it out, it comes out so easily. They don't make toys that have a tray that comes out that easily that a kid could get access to.
I'm not talking about it just coming out easily like a remote. I'm just saying, even if they're in, like, a sealed battery compartment within the toy, I mean, the screw could still come loose over time, especially if a kid's, like, chewing on it or something.
Yeah, I just think
it's just happen.
I just think it's more likely that it's a thing that a parent wouldn't even think about, that, oh, there's a remote around or something like that they could get access to. But regardless, it doesn't matter how it happened. Like, the kid got access to it somehow and got it in his mouth, and no fault of the parent. It's just, like, shit happens sometimes. It's just scary that a kid, I can't imagine how bad the kid was carrying on, that the parent that they were just like, oh, the kid has a virus.
I don't know, because again, like, you had 3 kids, like, you know how they act normally and when they're sick, and if a kid's screaming that bad that you're like, I have to bring them to the hospital, you know it's something pretty horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, you're always going to have parents that just, like, overreact to everything. So, and that's always a problem from the emergency physician perspective of, like, there's definitely people that go there for nonsense. So you always have to keep that in mind, that you have to try to triage, like, which ones are actually important and which parents are overreacting. But I think when you make the decision to go to the hospital with your kid, like, nobody wants to do that because it's such a pain in the ass. Like, before you're ready to leave their house, you're like, okay, I'm going to be there for at least 5 to 6 hours. I'm going to have to sit there and wait forever. It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm going to be there all night. Like, you go through all these things in your head, and then when you finally make the decision to go, it's usually, like you said, because you feel like something is, like, above bringing them to the doctor the next day, you know?
Yeah, nobody wants to go sit in the emergency room for, like, 8 hours.
No one wants to. It's terrible. And now, especially since urgent care, like, when you were a kid, there was only the emergency room. Now there's urgent care. So if I actually if my kid was that sick, I'd be like, okay, what time is it? All right, I'll take them to urgent care. And if it's like a Sunday night or something, I would be like, okay, is this something like we could deal with in the morning? And and when you make that decision that it's not, then you must be scared that something's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode is brought to you by the Gross Room.
So speaking of button batteries, obviously we have lots of cases of that in the gross room as well, and you could see just how terrible this looks. We have a post called Not As Good as a Button, and we also have a really interesting one called Vampire Kid. And in that particular post, I don't know if you remember seeing this one, Rhea. I did it a couple years ago. So the kid got imaging from an MRI done, and because of the magnet inside, it caused his MRI image to be blurry. Like he looked like he had no face on the MRI. It was
Wow.
crazy looking. So automatically when the technicians saw that, they're like, oh my God, something is messing with the magnet in the machine. And sure enough, this kid had swallowed a button battery. But the MRI picture is crazy because normally you're used to seeing like the eyes look really crazy and the face is just completely missing. It's nuts.
Wow, that's nuts. All right, guys, well, to see that post and many more, please head over to thegrossroom.com now to sign up. So a woman went on Reddit and explained that she flew for the first time in 15 years, and at both airports in her travels, the arms up scanner flagged her crotch area. So I think that's weird in itself. She explained that she was a mid-sized adult woman, about 5'8", 169 pounds. She was wearing bike shorts and normal underwear. She had no piercings, no medical devices, and her pockets were definitely empty. So she did not know what happened. She got patted down, but ultimately was passed through at both airports. So on Reddit, she's trying to figure out exactly what happened, and you won't believe the replies this thread had.
Well, it is actually really interesting. So they were saying, and this wasn't just from Reddit users, but the TSA is saying that sweat and perspiration are a weird thing that sets off scanners due to this millimeter wave technology that bounces off of fluids. So to get even more gross than potential sweaty crotch, it's like period pads, Depends underwear, things that have fluid around your crotch area are setting this off, which is, it's just embarrassing when you get pulled aside from everyone else. And it just happened to me when we were coming back from Bermuda going into the cruise ship. The thing kept going off like nuts, and I was like, dude, I have pins in my bun. Like he kept scanning around my bun, and I'm like, I'm not smuggling in some
Wait.
like odd insect from Bermuda.
Gabe doesn't have a photograph of your bun getting
he
wanded.
probably, I'm sure he does. He has a photograph of everything.
Well, you did get pulled aside for contraband because you had an electric blanket, and they are strictly forbidden on
Well,
the
guess
boat.
what? I had a medical exemption, and I was allowed to have it.
That is ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous. I can't sleep without it. I can, if my feet are too cold, like I can't sleep. It's just that. But yeah, like, you know, you get pulled aside and the guy's just like, "Do you have anything in your pockets?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And it's like my head's going off, and I'm just like, "I'm not taking my hair out right now. Like I have bobby pins in there. Just relax." But like everybody's staring at you, and like, you know what I mean? So this is the thing though that's interesting is like, because this particular woman said she had to get patted down, and then they were like, okay, you're fine. But couldn't TSA people use this as an excuse to pat down someone that they like want to touch? Really?
Well, I'm sure that happens often, but no, they should not be using it as an excuse. I'm sure they have to prove on the scanner where it went off.
Maybe, but they did say that it happens more frequently in people that have big booties.
I did notice that, which I thought was interesting. And also, one person referred to it as swamp crotch, which is just horrible to think about. I mean, I never thought about something like this happening. I guess that they've banned these scanners in a couple of countries because it often has false alarms. And I'm sure that holds up the entire line and they just want to get on with it. But it is embarrassing. At least they don't announce to the whole line why you're getting pulled aside.
Yeah, but now this is all I'm going to think about anytime I'm somewhere. It's just like, oh, I bet that person's got a sweaty crotch.
All right, in other outrageous aviation news.
This story is, I can't even believe it.
No, So a woman was snooping on the person sitting next to her on a flight and saw that the person received a text that said "rip," like rest in peace. So this lady interprets that as a threat, alerts the flight staff, and then they had to turn around the plane and go back to Puerto Rico where they had just taken off from only 30 minutes beforehand.
I can't believe this is true. So basically, if any person says that they feel threatened, they're going to do this.
Yeah, because I guess they can't take the chance. So they get back to the airport. Law enforcement has to like go through the whole plane and make sure it's safe. And the person had to prove that somebody in their life died the day before, and that's why they received the rest in peace text when they were talking to a relative about it.
That's the most outrageous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
How,
It's
like, I can't even imagine, like, if someone sits next to me on the plane ever and looks over at my phone, they're going to see some stuff that's probably alarming, right? Like, see, I would be so pissed. I'd be like, no, you're not going through my phone, actually.
so
I seriously would give them trouble. I would just be like, there's absolutely no reason that you need to go through my phone.
so the flight went like back on track and took off and went back to where it was going. But
Did that lady get her ass beat in the terminal because people were pissed off?
Well, my question is, does that person have to keep sitting next to each other? Do these people have to keep sitting next to each other when the flight goes back to normal?
She should go to jail. She sucks.
No, they can't take the risk because I'm sure that happens sometimes with minuscule things.
R.I.P. That's like not even anything.
No, that is ridiculous. I'm just saying, I'm sure there's been situations where there's been really small events that have turned into being bigger problems. So they can't take the risk at all, even though mind your business, stop eavesdropping on the person next to you. All I was thinking was, you keep saying like, oh, you could just do that when you're on the plane, blah blah blah. I'm like, I can't do anything involving our work when I'm on the airplane and have anybody look over my shoulder.
Clearly, if that's what people are looking at, it's just so bizarre.
Yeah, like I can't do anything we do for our job in a public space like that. People will freak out. And I can't afford to have my flight diverted because I already have plane anxiety. So I don't know. This is the most outrageous thing ever, but like all I keep thinking of is what if you have to keep sitting next to that person on the way back? And how uncomfortable
I'm not
that
sure.
would
They would probably move it around. It's just embarrassing for the person. I mean, it's embarrassing for the person whose phone it was, but I'm sure that they probably put that lady on another flight because they would be scared that she would get beat up. Like that would piss off so many people. Think about that.
Yeah, of course it would.
And it's like if the guy got a text that was just like the bomb on the plane you're sitting on is about to go off in 30 seconds. Like that might be like a little bit more alarming, but just like RIP, like what?
Like somebody
It could like my 12-year-old writes that if like I don't even know, one of a YouTube video gets deleted or something like the dumbest reason. It's like kind of a joke. Like you're like rip. Like
recently somebody on an airplane made their hotspot. There's a bomb on this plane. So obviously they had
Who
to like
would do that?
Well, people are idiots and they do that. But obviously that sparked some concern, and then they had to search the whole plane, and that person got interrogated and I believe that was just a really impractical joke.
That makes sense though. Like you wouldn't get mad about that because you're like, okay, obviously that's alarming. Because first you're just like, what human on earth would even do that? It's just so losery. But then you're like, okay, maybe it's somebody that's little like off their rocker that needs to get checked out or looked into.
I think the message here is that no matter what, when you look at somebody else's phone, you're going to see something you don't want to see. So don't look through other people's phones.
This actually happened to Laura when they went to Florida. I don't remember why they went to Florida, but they were taking the flight home and some guy started saying something about having a bomb or something like that. Or he started some kind of trouble.
Wasn't there like a fight and then he threw it out there?
There was a fight and then he said something. And he was just like, wasn't he like a Delco dude that was just like...
Yeah, but it wasn't like a serious threat. Like he was in an argument with somebody else and he just said it, not thinking.
It was just like when Ben Stiller in Meet the Parents was just like, it's not like I have a bomb. You can't say bomb on a plane like that. But they like had to evacuate the whole entire plane, and then they ended up getting stuck at the airport for like a whole day. It was just such a mess. And like the feeling you have is you just like want to punch a person because you're just like, I just want to get home, and you're being a tool, and now we all have to suffer for it.
I highly doubt they told the people exactly what happened on that flight. They honestly probably didn't even know until it was in the news a couple days later. They probably just said they turned around for a security concern and they cleared it and then sent them back on their way.
Yeah, that's true because
otherwise she would have gotten beat up.
and she sucks. Like imagine like hanging out with this chick or this person being your mom or something. Like she's totally thought she was doing the right thing and gonna be the hero protecting everyone, and you're just like, no.
It's not like the person got a text that was like, have fun murdering everybody on the airplane you're currently sitting on. It's like so ridiculous.
It really is. Like it's just alarming. I'm more alarmed that the stewardess or like didn't look over and say like,
I'm telling you,
that's nothing.
I'm sure they have to treat every single reported incident as a potential threat, and that's what happened. Like, because what if that did end up being something as dumb as it is?
I had a guy jerking off next to me on the airplane.
Well,
for a whole entire flight, and they didn't turn the flight around. Like,
horniness is not a threat to an entire commercial airline. Disgusting and disturbing, yes, but not a threat to all the people on board.
That guy was so gross, so it was disturbing. It was so nasty.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to see you in Atlanta in just a couple of days. And if you have reviews for us, please head over to Apple or Spotify. Head over to our YouTube and subscribe. And if you have a story for us, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com.
See ya. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor, and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.